Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
It is I, the one, the only. Normally, like, I forget or I'm remembering, I just go back and watch the episode. Now I can't do that. For whatever reason. So yeah, it's weird. Sorry. Yeah, let's go ahead and get into this, shall we?
Cool, yeah.
All right. Hello, Governor MC Part 2, and today joining me is...
Alfie, baby!
Yeah, and who are we talking about today?
Oh, don't worry, we're talking about the hottest, the slickest, the most switched on, grooviest, licious, shaggerific, bloody bangers and... Right, it's Austin Powers. We're doing Austin Powers.
You couldn't keep it going, huh?
Well, I wanted to because I could tell you put a lot of effort into that initial thing. But at the same time, I felt every word was bringing me closer and closer to being beheaded. The Queen has eyes and ears everywhere, Ian.
Yeah, oh, is that how that works? Now that the new royal baby has been born, now it's like, uh-oh. Yeah, that's fair. Anyway, so yes, Austin Powers. This was like kind of just a funny opportunity because I realized we did a Mike Myers film review, and then Manos and I are doing a fan film review with Michael Myers, and so I'm like, oh, we gotta make this Mike Myers week or whatever. So yeah, what? So I asked Alfie just a general request to pick any Mike Myers character. So you could have gone with Wayne, you could have gone with Shrek. What specifically made you decide Austin Powers?
Well, I feel like he's someone I'm out of every of the other characters I'm more suited to like talk about because obviously he's so entrenched in like British culture and the British like scene and like British stereotypes. I think that's like a good opportunity to kind of like get some of that out there. But also I feel like Austin Powers is someone that you type in Austin Powers on YouTube and stuff, he's just mostly like the movie clips. Like no one ever talks about Austin Powers. They just kind of watch it.
No, I think that's fair. Austin Powers is one of those weird things where, like, it caught fire so quickly, and then it became so incredibly dated so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember they set themselves up for a fourth movie at the end of the third one, like, possibly, and then it was just like, no, everyone was kind of done with it, including the people involved, which is kind of hilarious that it burnt out so quickly. Like, I don't know if you ever watch any of Whitest Kids You Know, but like that was like late 2000s, like 2009, 2010. And there's a bit where like this kid finds a genie lamp and he starts rubbing it and like the genie comes in and is like, groovy baby, yeah. And the guy's like, oh, that's so dated. Wait, someone made my movie idea? And like that, you know, just immediately like you do the Austin Powers voice or something, and it was huge. Austin Powers was everywhere in the early 2000s. I remember watching him as a kid or as like a young teenager, and I just. It was everywhere. Everyone was quoting Austin Powers constantly. $1 billion and come to me, mini-me. Like everything was crazy about it. And then it was almost like the second they were over, everyone was over it.
It's very much the closest thing we've ever got to like the comedy scene, the effect of like Batman 66 had. Where it burned super fast, but because it burned so hot, it faded. Like it was so exposed. People got sick. Like they cut the lifespan in half because they pushed it too hard.
I think that's an interesting way to look at it. But this is, of course, character discussion. So, like, what about Austin Powers as a character works?
Well, apart from the fact that Austin Powers is, as we said, switched on and groovy, and all about that life. I think he's interesting because we get in a lot of parody characters who are like obviously like takes on people and like archetypes or just anything. But Austin Powers kind of managed to become his own thing because I think they did the smart idea of, okay, yeah, we're going to pull on spy tropes. We're going to throw a couple of jabs at James Bond here and there. But there's also just a story to tell about like the idea of like free love and a mod in the 60s tangled up in that no one else was doing. So I think that's probably why he's got a little bit more meat on his bones on his own thing, aside from just being a parody.
Yeah, because like you got I can't even remember his name, and that's kind of the point, right? Like, I just associate the actor. I just associate Leslie Nielsen in the Naked Gun movies, which were popular a little beforehand. We're talking early to mid 90s that the Naked Gun series was really taking off, and like they had Naked Gun 33 and 1/3, and like those are doing pretty much more just a straight parody of like your spy man films. There's a lot of James Bond in that, stuff like that's going on. But yeah, generally speaking, those are a much more flat take, and there's really not a ton of character to him. It's just kind of wacky situation, wacky situation, wacky situation. Whereas Austin Powers is independently his own character. Like he's got elements that are definitely like commenting and poking fun at James Bond, but there is something to him underneath that, and that makes it interesting.
Right, you've got more obvious ones like in the world around him, like Basil Exposition or like a lot of vagina, or even Dr. Evil to like some extent. Like these are all kind of like straight takes from those kind of archetypes of like from the modern Moore kind of Bond. But apart from that, he himself is kind of almost closer to Captain America than he is James Bond.
I guess I hadn't thought of that. That's a really good point. But he like voluntarily gets himself frozen and all that stuff. And yeah, it does seem like it just gives Mike Myers the opportunity to just do everything he can want to do. And it all kind of goes with the premise of, oh yeah, he's been frozen for like 40 years or whatever, and so he's bored and just wants to get out and do a bunch of crazy stuff now. And that's just kind of his personality. He's like, oh yeah, he's the guy that'll just walk through a hotel room, hotel lobby, buck-ass naked. And he's got like such a cavalier attitude about things. Like, one of my favorite gags that's in every Austin Powers movie is when things will get like really serious and he'll like break down. And they give it to Dr. Evil in the third movie, but like he'll break down like this sad, really disappointing thing in his life or something, and then he'll just like, oh, whatever, and just it'll go off into some random bullshit from there. And that is just such a it's actually tied into the character. It's not just a funny scene for a funny scene. It actually develops the character, and it does a double fold of developing the character almost, because yeah, you get like background exposition on the character, but you also get like, this is just how he deals with this shit by just being this kooky crazy guy. Like these behaviors are not arbitrary. It's his response to these horrible contrivances of his backstory, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's a way to like do pop culture references and like play with some of the ideas and like poke fun at some of like the sexism and all kinds of like the not so fun stuff about the media he enjoyed and his father enjoyed. Like he says, like Austin Powers was inspired a lot by like the things his father would watch with him back when he was a kid. So it's able to like enjoy that, make fun of it for being kind of completely like awful or dated, but at the same time recognize that no, there's some good stuff here you can do with this. He doesn't have to make this entirely a damnation, which I think is like appreciated in the character, where although Austin Powers is a sleazebag, he's not the worst sleazebag. He's got like very clear defined limits, like unlike someone like say a Quagmire like Family Guy or something.
Yeah, I think that's fair, because like he's very sexist. He's like just obviously doesn't understand when just back off, and of course the movie kind of rewards him for that. But it's in a wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of way. It's like, yeah, that's just how these movies work. So, but it's okay because it's going to be awful for him. And I think that's exemplified really well in the opening scene of the second movie, where, yeah, he gets the girl that he probably shouldn't have gotten by all rights at the end of the first movie, and they get married and whatever. And then, like, the second movie just opens with her turning out to be one of the fembots with the boob guns, and she tries to kill him, and he has to blow her up. And then, like, they play that for comedies later on. Or they play that for a laugh later on, where he's like, oh, yeah, we're truly in love, and we're going to go off together and really start life. I was going to retire and everything. But then it turns out she was a fembot and she tried to kill me. All right, baby, let's shag. Like, it just gets this immediate turn, and it's so disappointing because, like, of course, how else would you deal with, like, constant death and just shit around you? You just kind of, like, throw yourself into hedonism. It does work profoundly well in a strange way.
Which, I mean, I guess is kind of like the thing he's like embodying with like the swingers. Like, he's a mod, which is like a big movement in the 60s, and I remember like my parents telling me like stories about they knew people who were still like going into the mod fashion, and like things about that, and like this whole like the free love and just free use of drugs and psychedelics is like a rebellion against the system. And that is kind of what Austin Powers is. He's like, life kind of sucks, just enjoy it. Mm-hmm. But in like to the most extreme, where everything's psychedelic and everything's sexual partners everywhere, and like the thought of a condom is just completely abhorrent to him, like all of this kind of stuff. He's just like this huge walking embodiment of that culture in England, like London in the 60s, in the same way that Captain America is meant to be like the American dream embodied as like a person.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny that, of course, he's working for the British government, though, and he's a secret agent because, like, oh yeah, it's fight the power and everything, but still work for the government when they're the evil super scientists going around and stuff. Let me ask you this, because I think one problem that the movies definitely have is they just kind of become the same jokes over and over again. Like, they even, of course, reference it in the third movie with the Osborns, that Ozzy stops again, very dated. Ozzy stops the fucking movies. Like, it's the same bloody joke from the last movie where the satellite looked like a giant dick. That whole bit went on in both movies. There's like the screen and light, and it looks like people are doing just the most awful things to each other behind, because all they see is the silhouettes. Like, they kept reusing the same jokes. Do you think that Austin Powers could have gone on if they did something like actually changing out the villain? And I don't necessarily mean Scotty, but I also don't necessarily not mean Scotty.
I think that's an interesting point, because I do think like spy stories as a genre are like up there with like westerns and superheroes, and just the amount of shit you can do with them, where they almost just stop being like an individual genre, because you can have like subcategories in that. Like, you can have a spy story about like someone undercover in love, and like you can have a parody like this, you can have a more gritty tale. Like, there's so many different things you can do with that. And I think Austin Powers as a character is so extreme and out there, but specifically tied to one time period. The whole conceit of him is throwing him in a time period he's not around. I think he could have benefited from being thrown into situations that weren't as outlandish as he is.
Such as?
So say you throw him in a more conventional Daniel Craig style Bond film, where everyone else, like with a villain like is completely straight and modern, and it has to deal with fucking Austin Powers turning up.
I don't understand why it's so why people develop so many complex ways to torture a man when we all have the same weakness. Oh no, not my coin and purse.
Apples and berries, baby. Come on, Memento! You can't do another man's tickle tackle.
Yep, it works, it sells, I'd watch it. Yeah, that shit would be real. You have a really good point there. I don't know, yeah, that does seem like it could kind of work to bring it back, and of course the question just becomes if Myers would or could at this point.
Totally on board for it. He keeps, I think in like a recent interview, like only a couple of months ago, or like late 2018, he was like, we've been working on it for a while, but because I've got like 3 kids right now, it's just I've been taking stuff that like lets me stay at home more, but as they're getting older, we've got a script and it's going to focus more on Dr. Evil, but Hollywood types say this all the time, so that could be another 10 years before that gets made, but he's definitely on board for it at this point now.
Yeah, and I guess then the other question becomes like again, it was such a cultural phenomenon, like, you know, I didn't know the word mod, I didn't associate it in that way, and I recently rewatched Teen Titans.
Mad Mod.
Yeah, Mad Mod, and he's a fucking Austin Powers clone. Like, that character clearly existed in its own way, shape, and form in the comics, and I've never read it, but, like, there's no way you can convince me that that characterization was from the comics. It's 100% Austin Powers.
And I think that's just because it's an archetype. The mod is like the Who, like inspired that kind of thing, and it's all that scene of like English culture. It's very big, and it seems to be quite popular with Americans because it is a lot of like, you read like papers and stuff about this, about like the stuck up class culture of the time who very disliked this youth culture movement. They were saying, oh, it's the American culture and consumerism bleeding into our British values. So of course that appeals to actual Americans because it's like, the Brits have loosened up.
Yeah. And so, like, that's just, it is really interesting to see just how damn infectious Austin Powers was. So, like, the question becomes then, are people over it? Like, would people even want to see an Austin Powers 4 at this point? And the honest answer is, I don't know. I really don't know if people would be down for it, because it does seem like it's, if they were gonna do it, they really missed their window of opportunity.
Yeah, the place to do it would have been like at the height of like after Skyfall or something.
Like Skyfall was a really big movie, or like after the first Daniel Craig movie came out and everyone was really surprised that we had another good, like, that's the other thing about Austin Powers. They were running, I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this 100%, if I'm remembering correctly, the first one's in 99, the last one's in 03, and I'm trying to remember when the last Pierce Brosnan Bond was. I want to say it's like 02.
I think so, but then
Yeah.
Casino Royale came out like very
Casino Royale is
like-
05, if I'm again, I'm doing a lot just based on memory. Casino Royale can maybe be 06, but I really feel like, no, not Bando, BOND. I can't type and think at the same, and talk at the same time. I'm so bad about it. James Bond, Wikipedia. Oh, wait, list of James Bond films. That'll probably work better. So let's see here. Okay, Tomorrow Never... Alright, so we got GoldenEye in 95, Tomorrow Never Dies in 97, World Is Not Enough in 99, Die Another Day in 2002, Casino Royale is 2006. So, like, really, Austin Powers International Man of Mystery is 99, and then Austin Powers Goldmember is 2003. They were running concurrently with some of the worst Bond movies. So, like, you kind of had, you know, Bond being the huge phenomenon that it was, but being really disappointing, so it was, like, kind of rife for parody at the time. I just don't know, because, like, yeah, Skyfall was 2012, Spectre's 2015, and, like, Skyfall was really popular again, but it was really popular for being good, and Spectre was kind of immediately forgotten about by people. Like, I heard so many people talk about Skyfall. Like, 2 months after it was out, I've not heard anyone talk about Spectre ever again.
Right. I think because it kind of had that like Skyfall obviously had that very like Dark Knight effect where like not a lot of people watched the first one, people who did enjoyed it, but like the second one just like did its own thing like straight from the get-go and pulled a lot from the Dark Knight, and then kind of exploded because it was like this huge jump in quality that you didn't have to watch any of a Bond film to get into it. Like the Dark Knight, you didn't have to watch any of a Batman film to get into it. So then it spread to a new audience and then it got new fans, and then it was like perfect like timing for something like that. And that's why I kind of see what you're saying about like if a franchise is being bad, then that's the time to parody it. But I'm also kind of in the ball like if something's doing really good, I think you can still throw some jabs at it because I think that's when people are more secure with I feel like comedy works best when you're not punching down.
I think that's fair. Would you consider the Austin Powers movies to be punching down on the Brosnan films though?
I would say, what was it? The other spy movie parody we mentioned earlier.
Oh, Spy Hard and Naked Gun and stuff?
Yeah, that is punching down, I feel. Austin Powers,
I don't know, those are almost too stupid to be punching down.
True.
Like, there's a scene where, like, the woman slaps him and he grabs her arm, and then she slaps him with her other arm, and he grabs that arm, and then a third arm comes up from nowhere and slaps him. And, like, at that point of comedy, I don't know. It's just, there are no physical rules to this universe.
All right, that's fair. But I feel like Austin Powers specifically was more celebrating a specific period. Because like the Austin Powers movies that come out aren't really parodying the James Bond movies that are right next to them. They're parodying the James Bond movies that came out back in the day.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, because like I remember being in class and the teacher played a clip from Austin Powers and from Dr. No. And like in the first Austin Powers, Dr. Evil wears like this big shiny suit with this weird helmet, and it's almost identical to something that Dr. No wears in his movie. And so it's like just such a direct callback kind of reference that it's you're right, it's definitely more about the Bond films from the 60s. So yeah, again, I like your pitch, Alfie. You should make, abandon the Spider-Man and the Batman audio dramas and stuff. Just make a fucking Austin Powers fan film. It'd be hilarious.
I mean, you could throw some ideas out there, but like, the only way I'd be able to make that work with the comedies, I'd have to get Ruben to be the villain, just to see him be done with me being like completely off the walls Austin Powers.
I don't know, man. It's just nuts to look at the Austin Powers films and just kind of see what they turned into, and the idea of just giving him just a completely straight villain sounds really funny to me. Because Mike Myers is like the master of just beating a joke into the ground, and I mean that in a good way. Like, it just never ends with him. Kind of the example of that like just is a really popular one to kind of go outside of Mike Myers, like the Family Guy joke where Peter's running home and he falls and he like skins his knee and he just sits there and goes and it goes on for like entirely too long. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it keeps going on is what's making it actively funnier. Mike Myers is very, very good at that. Of just letting something drag on and get just milking every ounce of comedy he can get out of it, because he knows precisely when it's about to get old, and then he'll add something else to it, which is really impressive. Yeah,
and I feel like that maybe kind of ironic then, like how the Austin Powers movies died too quick. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But maybe that, I feel like, see, I'm just trying to think of now, like, where do you take this character, like, outside of his films? Is he someone that could only work in live action played by Mike Myers, or is he a character like James Bond where you could do different iterations of him, or like see like, and could you get some jokes out of that? Like, could you do a Casino Royale of like Austin Powers' first case and where he's a virgin?
Honestly, no. I don't see how you can have anyone else play Austin Powers because so much of it is just Mike Myers' like goofy, over the top personality coming through. You know?
Yeah.
Like Mike Myers is the kind of guy who just can't be shut up. And that's, you know, for better or worse, that is kind of endearing about him. And it's crazy because I'm not a huge Mike Myers fan, but like I like him well enough. I'll give him some, you know, some due respect. And I just don't see how Mike Myers could, how anyone else could do it. And again, if you divorce it from the performance, even if you did like a comic written by Mike Myers of Austin Powers, I just don't see how you could do it. Like it just wouldn't be as funny without the like. As much as that stuff is not about like the sound of his voice in particular, there is something about just the delivery, the comedic timing that's really dependent on the performance itself. Did I lose you? I think I lost him. Oh no. Oh no. This is not Shagadelic at all.
All right, am I back?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Like might just be weird, but where we were going off so that I can like go back.
I was just talking about how I don't think that like anyone else. I think that like the timing is the necessary part of the performance. The comedic timing is the necessary part of the performance for Mike Myers as Austin, and I don't think that could translate anywhere else.
Right. See, I feel like that's probably true. And it would probably be a disservice to try and not do anything with him while he's still around, and he's obviously still eager to do the role. But I do think like kind of the ideas at play with Austin Powers, if you handled it to someone with a different take, could like because he's a character that isn't specifically tied to the time period he came out with. Like the background of those films kind of are, but he's very much not a 90s character. He's kind of got that quality that could just lead him to be in any situation. Like if you were going to just do a completely different reimagining of something, like you can have him unfreeze in any time period really, and the universe he's in is so wacky you could send him to any time period even. And just play with that kind of British expression that came out during that time, which was like so prevalent, because obviously this character has been, and this archetype has been used before, because I mean, like you say, Mad Mod is one of the more standout Teen Titans villains in that show, just because he's so unique and you can have so many different situations with someone like that as a villain. And I think the same applies to a hero. It's just that it's such a different and unique voice to that character that I can feel you can play him off a lot of archetypes.
Yeah, I tend to agree. So maybe someone else could manage it, but it'd be... I'd imagine it'd be a very hard sell. So, like, if you were to do it and not get Mike Myers, I don't know who would... like, those would be big shoes to fill, as strange as it
We've
sounds.
seen who it would be, Ian. It's Tom Cruise.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one. Fucking Tom Cruise and Britney Spears show up in the third movie. It was such a big thing. It's so crazy how big those movies were, and they're like just immediately left behind. So
It's like 60s Batman, where like crawling up the side of the window and then someone pops their head out.
Yeah. I don't know. It's crazy. Still kind of tripping over Michael Caine being in that, and then like 2 years later he's in Batman Begins as Alfred. It's weird.
And that's actually a good that's a good pull. Is I don't know if you know about this, but like he's kind of like talked about like who his main inspirations were for Austin Powers, and it wasn't like he said James Bond was an influence, but like the main one he picked up on was Michael Caine was in like a movie in the 60s where he played a spy, and making him Austin Powers' father was like a reference to that. And I thought that was a good thing, because I feel like they've got very that kind of like Cockney British slang, and then Austin Powers turns it down from like when Michael Caine speaks, but he's still got that like funny way like British people tend to talk when they're not being like sophisticated and proper when their dialect is they just say, oh fucking hell, like there's just an inherent like funniness to that, and then when Austin Powers is doing that and trying to seduce people, because you got like the American and like the French and the British like styles of seduction. But like they're very elegant dressed men, like swooping in, helping in these women, and just like hi. Austin Powers is just like, hey, babe. Like it's just there's such a different element to it that isn't used a lot, which I feel is why Austin Powers and like the things he references kind of have like a place in this kind of like being used for comedy, because it's a very like unused aspect of comedy, but I think one that works. Like accent humor and like dialect humor is just like timeless, because that's always gonna be funny to people.
Yeah, I mean, because it's different and it's weird. Yeah. All right, well, I think that's a pretty good place to leave things. I mean, there's not really much to recommend besides the 3 movies. Do you have a favorite of the 3?
I quite like the first one as just an individual thing. I think it's the one that like overstays its welcome the least, because I feel like that's just like, oh, okay, you get everything introduced. There was a lot of the jokes he's obviously eager to use work in that one. But I also think the second one might be funnier.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the second one works the best because the first one feels really unrefined by comparison to the other 2. There's like just a lot of like dead moments compared. And the third one does just reuse a lot of jokes from the second one. So it feels just kind of like they were running out of ideas and they were just trying to get as many out as fast as they could. So yeah, I do like the second one the most. Okay. Well, Alfie, thanks again for doing this, man. It's always fun.
Anytime, baby.
Oh, right. Do I make you Randy?
Oh, behave.
Yeah. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm a geek for fun.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.